now it's time for a review of what's making the headlines in the papers this morning with our dear Dr. Constance Eruku. Good morning, Dr. Constance.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very well. I hope you had a good weekend.
I did. It was too short.
Absolutely.
It was. But good to see you this morning.
Likewise. What do we have in the headlines this morning?
So many things.
Oh, my.
Okay, let's look at those stories that are shaping the agenda for you today. Let's begin with this day newspaper. This morning, the dominant theme across all papers is insecurity. That's the biggest story, particularly school kidnappings and how this is shaping political discourse. The government, led by President Bola Tinubu, is under pressure to respond more aggressively to violence, especially in the northern part of the country. And so the president has publicly stated that insecurity is his greatest concern. The scale of recent abductions is also drawing international attention, especially with the Pope publicly calling for hostage release, And the closures of schools may have longer-term educational and societal impacts, particularly with affected states. So this day newspaper here reports on the 38 worshippers that were abducted at a church in Eruku, Kwara State, who have now been released, while 51 students kidnapped from the Catholic school in Niger State have been rescued. Some reports say the 51 escaped. 13 teachers still remain in captivity. And Zenith Bank is celebrating tech excellence by rewarding hackathon winners at Tech Fair. And on the window, the paper says 3 banks, First Bank, Access, and Zenith MDs, risk imprisonment for disobedience to court order in the alleged Nest Oil $1 billion debt. Moving on to Daily Trust, which writes about 13 teenage girls abducted in Borno State while doing farm work. Vanguard has gone with the escape of 51 students abducted from that Catholic school in Niger State last week. The remaining abductees, which was over 300 in total, remain in captivity. Vanguard reads about the president directing the withdrawal of police officers from VIPs. In the Punch, it leads also with that story on withdrawal of policemen, and New Telegraph, which goes again with the police and the VIP. Then the paper also highlights Archbishop Kaigama warning that until corrupt leaders are punished, Nigeria won't move forward. FIRS warns against politicizing tax administration. Taxes are about to go up next year. Daily Independent reports about inflationary pressures and how the Monetary Policy Committee is trying to manage that. It further reflects on the United States signaling efforts to protect Nigerian Christians and President Tinubu making assurances that he's monitoring the security situation nationwide. Abuja Inquirer says the federal government is overwhelmed in light of the recent kidnappings. Then moving on to the international front pages, we'll begin with the Citizen newspaper, where it says South Africa is demanding they not be told what to do. The country just successfully hosted the G20 summit, the first on African soil, with declarations adopted by countries in attendance. The United Kingdom, where Chancellor Rachel Reeves is front and center, many papers lead with her upcoming budget, which is expected to include a £15 billion expansion of welfare. So the Daily Telegraph this morning talks about a welfare giveaway. The Daily Mirror talks about the budget with a slightly different angle. It says here, help us, Chancellor. Cost of living is #1 priority for many citizens. The Times reports a surcharge on very high value homes via council tax as part of the plan, targeting the wealthy. Our newspaper has gone with talk of a £600 million levy on universities' income from international student fees, with the revenue intended to fund means-tested grants for UK students. In Daily Mail, former Prime Minister David Cameron reveals that he was diagnosed with prostate cancer last year after his wife urged him to get tested. This personal health story is being used also as a call for more men to go for prostate checks. Financial Times this morning writes about Ukraine peace talks and Trump's peace plan with doubt on where this goes. The same story features in The Guardian newspaper, where it says Europe is drawing up its own peace plan. Also in The Guardian, the suggestion the BBC is set to overhaul its editorial standards process, possibly creating a Deputy Director General role in response to a bias row that involved the President of the US, President Donald Trump. Well, the broader angle is about rebuilding trust and improving governance at the BBC. The bigger picture internationally is the COP30 that's ended in Belém, Brazil, highlighting tensions between developed and developing nations over climate finance, energy transition, and global equity. Parties agreed on a compromise text, but binding language on fossil fuel phase-out remained elusive. There's also strong push for the Global South influence in global governance, especially at that G20 summit that ended in South Africa, the first time on African soil. Attending countries endorsed the declarations made there, and the summit was framed as a moment for Global South to hammer on a reformed global order, particularly in financial institutions like the IMF and development banks. Well, let's then break down what these headlines mean and how they affect everyday citizens. Let's return to This Day newspaper to look at the lead again. So the lead in This Day newspaper is talking about those abductions, and I mean, delightful news that those kidnapped in Eruku have been released, and that offers some hope. And the 51 Catholic students that were abducted escaped, although the remaining are still in captivity. And let's not forget Kebbi State, where the 24 or 25 girls that were taken are still not yet back.
Well, Dr. Constance, very right that, you know, there's a bit of celebration because of what has happened in Eruku, the widely reported abduction from last week that we've all been talking about, with the 38 worshippers who have now been rescued. So that's a big relief to the Eruku community, as congregants have also begun to return normal church programs. But there's still a lot of unanswered questions with this rescue effort. We do not know if there were any arrests that were made. It is not known whether, you know, what were the details of this rescue? Were there any negotiations? I think that's what's really missing from this entire report, and what everybody really wants to know at the moment.
Well, there is that, and also the fallout, which is the closure of schools.
Absolutely.
It started with the government announcing that 47 unity schools in Kebbi State need to be shut down. And then other states followed suit. There's Taraba, there's Adamawa, there's Niger State, Kaduna, Yobe, Plateau, a lot of states in the northern part of the country. And we have to begin to think about, you know, what that does to education. You know, already some of the states have educational challenges to use, you know, some use the word backward, you know, but let's not use that word. The problem is that they have been educationally disadvantaged, you know, from primary to secondary school level, and that affects the number of people that go to tertiary education. And now you have this problem happening. Well, let's look at some data first of all. The situation looks very dire. Over at least 2,000 students are said to have been abducted between 2014, when it started with the Chibok girls, and 2020. According to UNICEF and Save the Children, these are organizations that are working actively on children issues. UNICEF and Save the Children International, over 180 children have been killed in the process. At least 90 injured and more than 90 missing, because not everyone comes home, you know, after those kidnappings. It means that they do not return home, and between January 2023 and November 2025, some 22 attacks have been recorded in educational institutions in Nigeria. and 816 students kidnapped. These are mostly verified. There's more reporting going on, although some are verified, some are not verified. But it tells you that this is an epidemic.
Yes, absolutely.
That needs to be, tackled. The government is trying, it says, but it looks like the movement is not enough. So the common sense, or the common theme that is driving this is ransom and money, because most of them ask for ransom, and then that ransom is used to continue to finance the criminal activities of these groups, whether you can call them bandits or terrorists or just kidnappers. So some money was paid for the release of the Chibok girls, and then there was Dapchi 2018, there was Kankara 2020, Tagina 2021, Greenfield University 2021 as well, Kuriga, Kaduna 2024, and countless others where money has been paid to these criminals.
Right.
So it's also a senator representing MAGA in Kebbi State had talked about it last week when he said that at least 200 villages in this hometown of MAGA, where there was abduction of the students, was completely taken by terrorists as of last year. Although this year it has improved, a lot of them have been moved out, or a lot of them have been chased away. So we are dealing with a serious crisis, even when the government says it is trying. Still a lot going on across the states.
Right, and if I can just comment as well about those 50 out of the 300 students that had escaped. First of all, their age group. These students were believed to be between 10 and 18 years old, and they escaped. Now, it's very popular to see during especially a large invasion that some people will run away during all of the chaos that will be going on. Now, the escape was only known by the authorities because some of the families were visited, and that's when they were told that, oh, our children have come back, or one or two of them have returned. And I found that very interesting that, it seemed that at some point the authorities didn't know until the very end that these children had actually escaped. Now, also part of what comes out of that report is that Pope Leo also, appealed for the immediate release. I think last week we spoke about Pope Leo's role in all of this and how invested he has been because of, his prior visits to Nigeria. Now, also the president put out an official statement on his X account about this, about handling the 253 students that were still missing, including the 12 members of staff. But like I said before, and that will be my point that I'll keep hammering on, we do not have enough information on how this is now for the Eruku worshippers. We do not have enough information on how they were rescued. I think people would like that level of accountability to be able to know some of the details. Was a ransom paid? Were they really, were they swooped in and taken back by Nigerian authorities? What exactly happened?
For parents, the bottom line would be that their wards need to come home, or if they have come home already. Yes. Desperate parents all over the country, always, if they are asked to pay ransom, then they go and pay ransom because they want their children to come back home, or their husbands or wives or whoever it is that is involved. But I'd like to really, really focus on that closure of schools. This decision was made by these states, and one of the reasons why it has been made is probably because they do not feel they have the sufficient capacity to handle more attacks on the schools. I think that must have been based on intelligence that more is going to happen, because in the last 1 week, it looks like the terrorists or bandits went on complete rampage, kidnapping people. So the intelligence must have been that more is coming and we will not be able or have the capacity to handle this, so the schools have to be shut temporarily. So the question then is, how long will these schools be shut down? Is this just for this month, next month, for the Christmas period, or does this go on for January? And
right now, Dr. Constance, Nigeria is really on the hot seat when it comes to these issues of abductions and terrorism. So I think that as well, there's two sides to the coin. The government is also probably just, erring on the side of caution and making sure that we don't have more of these incidents. As you rightly said, there's probably anticipation that there will be more hits in these areas, more abductions, more of this, because one of the stories we haven't even touched is the one that has happened in Borno State with the farmer girls, which I'm sure you have ready for us later. But for now, I think it's a good. There's two sides to the point, to the coin. It's a good stance to kind of put those children in a safe place, which is their homes. Let them stay in the house till we know what's happening, till we're able to arrest the situation, instead of sending children into literally the lion's den.
Well, this is a big blow to the morale of students.
Very true.
Of parents, of education entirely in the country. We will be having an interview.
But better safe than sorry.
Yeah. We'll be having an interview later with a security expert to tell us what this means. What does this say to the criminals? Is this a win for them? Is this what they wanted? To present a picture of an entirely crippled country that we have to shut down most schools because we're unable to match them in terms of whether it's ammunition, whatever it is.
There's another angle, Dr. Constance.
Yes.
What if, hopefully, the government has a plan in place? Maybe there's a plan. I want to be positive and believe that there is a plan. Shutting down these schools, maybe it's to have a different approach towards, these bandits that are coming. Maybe it's a way to, just kind of subdue the whole situation, besides the protection of the children.
All right, let's move to Vanguard newspaper, where Vanguard is reporting that the president has withdrawn police officers guarding VIPs, asking them to focus on core police duties. This has been a running matter in this country. The announcement was made after the president met with service chiefs yesterday, including the Inspector General of Police. The president had been meeting with security agencies who have been giving him updates on what is happening in the country. And the withdrawal of police, I think, follows the security challenges that we're facing today and the desire to boost police presence in communities, as well as deploy policemen to core duties. Henceforth, VIPs who want police protection will have to request armed personnel from the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps. The president had already approved the recruitment of 30,000 police officers, given shortages that we're facing. Plans are also in place to upgrade the police training facilities. That's a major development.
Yes, that's a major development. Now, the directive, as you've rightly said, has come about after a security meeting that was held addressing the current security turmoil that Nigeria is currently going through. Now, police personnel will now return to core policing duties to improve national security. But my question is this a temporary measure, or will this become the status quo?
No, this is not temporary.
I mean, that part was not clear.
No, this is not temporary. In the past, we have tried as a country to withdraw VIPs from politicians, from big men, in quotes, big men in quotes, who move around with police officers, causing them to do mundane errands that it takes them away from their core duties as police officers, and very unprofessional at the same time. But there are a couple of facts. Nigeria has about 370,000 policemen, or less than that. And so this means that in a population of at least 200 million people, or over 200 million, we have one policeman to over 600 people. There is a United Nations recommendation which says that it should be one policeman to 450 people.
So we're not so far off if we're using our entire force.
Well, we don't have enough. Based on that recommendation, we'll probably have to hire 190 to 200,000 policemen. The president has approved only 30,000.
Wow.
And the reasons are obvious. It takes a lot of finance to be able to do this. So the country, I don't think at the moment has the capacity to do that. And the 100,000 police officers are recorded to be deployed to VIPs currently. So pulling that 100,000 back into the population.
There will be a significant change.
I mean, it's still not enough.
No, it
but
isn't.
At least it
it's
is
a good
something.
step in the right direction.
Yes, we're moving towards the direction that we should be on. And why does this decision by the president matter?
Right.
I think it will resonate with citizens who have been saying before that you need more police officers in the streets, in the communities, especially in these times. The president's resolve to do this matters. It shows action and quick response in the face of onslaught from bandits, whether it's terrorists and criminals. I mean, that complaint in the past, there have been others that these policemen be withdrawn. It was never taken seriously. It did not stop. So the question now will be whether we will see, this order adhered to immediately. From today, we'll have to be checking whether the police officers are really withdrawn from
we'll have to be
VIPs.
checking indeed.
There's also the civil defense that is now the arm where you can draw protection if you want. Initially, the Civil Defense Corps did not bear arms. Their mandate was later expanded in 2007 to include bearing of arms and protecting national assets, which includes oil pipelines and the fight against vandalism. So arms, they now have arms, but specific units, that have arms. So if you now need police protection, you have to request from them, and then there'll probably be a procedure in order to get that. But with the retraining of police, with more funding and equipment, perhaps we will be closer to that goal of being able to match the criminality that is currently going on in Nigeria. That's a big perhaps. And let's look at New Telegraph newspaper. Still on the abduction, the Eruku church worshippers in Kwara. If you can pull up that report, we had a lot of people that were rejoicing in Kwara State that these people have been rescued. Quick response from the president and his team, although there are others that are still missing. And of course, ISWAP abducts 12 farmers from their farm. You wanted to say something about that?
Yes, so the females that were abducted were actually teenagers, and they were aged between 15 and 20, and they were seized while they were working on their farms. Now, these girls had just gone out to harvest crops when they were attacked, and this attack was actually on a farming community. It was also reported that one of the girls actually escaped. So I don't know, does this change the narrative from the previous, does it bring us back to our previous narrative of all these attacks being done on farmers?
Well, yes, the farming attacks are not new. We have had that problem mostly in the Middle Belt, with Benue State, with Kwara State, those areas that we call the food basket of the nations, where farming communities, have been on consistent, deliberate, and systematic displacement over the past few years. And that's why, some have come up with that story of Christian persecution in Nigeria. But the fact is that when these displacements are happening, and people are being moved into internally displaced camps, you now have other people that are moving into these communities. This is why some believe that this is a deliberate plan to make sure that the demography in the region is being changed.
Right.
People going to farms, they are kidnapped and unable to return to their farms with their families, because this is happening in a large scale. It's not just one person, it's not 2 people or 3 people, it's in hundreds over the years. So we're seeing what happened in Borno State. This is 12 female farmers.
Yes.
It's still quite a number of people to be abducted. So I think that the security forces will be looking to rescue them. We'll see what happens with that. Let's go to the international headlines. Russia-Ukraine war and the U.S. peace deal. So there was that meeting in Geneva yesterday with top U.S. officials and European leaders. The U.S. presenting a 28-point peace deal to end the war in Ukraine. The Europeans are shocked. Ukraine is also in shock. However, it is in a very tight corner. It doesn't seem to have much leverage. It needs the United States as much as it needs European leaders. And so it is saying that it might lose its dignity in the midst of all this. And the European leaders are saying, we are not aware any peace that does not have the EU and Ukraine on the table is not peace.
That's right. And I think it's getting a little bit exhausting how the talks have been going on and on for a couple of months now. Now they're in Geneva, and they're saying that they're actually moving closer to a peace plan in ending the war. But we don't know if that peace plan is anywhere in sight. As usual, expectedly, the US is in the middle of this discussion and placing themselves as a key mover and shaker in the decisions that will ultimately be made. Now, Secretary of State Marco Rubio says negotiations have made significant progress, although there's still some bottlenecks in the entire discussion.
It's a hard pill for Ukraine to swallow, you know, especially under a U.S. presidency.
Yes.
The president has 4 years. What will they do? They're sandwiched in between. But there are definitely some guarantees. Trump says that he sees this war very differently from Democrats, and he's treating it as such. You know, while Ukraine has limited cuts, the peace deal, the 28-point peace deal, also gives Ukraine some guarantees from the U.S. You know, the main point is that Ukraine will not join NATO. You know, it has been its intention to join NATO, and that has been the problem for Russia, which says that it does not want to see the expansion of NATO, especially with Ukraine, which is close to its borders. If Ukraine joins NATO, that means you will see a stationing of NATO forces on the border with Russia, and Russia does not want to see it. So the United States says Ukraine has to drop the membership of NATO, but it will have guarantee from the US. And then Russia also has to sign up that it will not invade Ukraine after this. It has to respect the sovereignty of Ukraine.
But will
and
Russia
if it does,
respect that?
If
because
it does,
they have a track record
Yes.
of not standing by what they say.
but if it does, then the US will have to intervene. NATO will have to intervene heavily, and the US will have to be drawn into that. So there are a couple of other things in that 28-point peace deal, which is that Ukraine will also lose part of its regions, part of land to Russia. From the beginning, it had always said it will not cede any part of Ukraine to Russia. It looks like this is going to happen. There's more. They're still having discussions, and we'll be bringing you the updates of what eventually is the final deal that is accepted both by Russia, Ukraine, and the EU leaders. So that's the headlines for today.